Today we're going to learn about something called objects. And objects aren't just a something in a game, they are everything in the game. Everything inside your game is an object. And understanding objects is very important to make your game process much smoother. So, even if you are already familiar with Flowlab, I want you to follow along with this video. And the first thing I'm going to have you do is create a new tutorial project so you can follow along with me. So to create a tutorial project, you're going to sign into Flowlab, go to My Games, press on New Game, and then this screen will pop up and you're going to select Flowlab Tutorial and then just follow exactly what they tell you to do. And when you're done, go ahead and come back here. Right now, I want you to hit pause, go make the tutorial project really quick, and then come back. Okay, so you should have something that looks like this in a tab on your screen. And we're going to use this to demonstrate some of the properties of objects. Let's look how a game in Flowlab is built. So starting here, you have your whole game, and then your game is broken down into levels, and each level is made up of different objects. Here's two examples: a player object, a ground object. Let's look at a player object. Every single object in the game is broken down by three main components. Those are the sprite. The sprite determines how the object looks. The physics. The physics determines how the object interacts with other objects, like what happens when it bumps into another object. Does it pass through? Does it bounce off it? And finally, you have behaviors. Behaviors are basically your code. In Flowlab, we don't write code. We use what's called spaghetti coding, and that uses logic blocks connected by wires. And every object has what's called a type, and that's just short for what type of object it is. Again, the type of object I use as the example is a player object. This describes what sort of object it is, and it is very important that you name the types of objects in your game. And you'll see why when we start coding. This right here is not correct. This should be named something descriptive like B. So you can think of objects in your game like objects in the real world. If we use a school as an example, and we say the school is our game, a school is made up of different classrooms, which you could consider different levels. And everything inside of the school, from the bricks that make up the wall to the books, chalkboard, and even students in the classroom, are objects in our game. A table object is different from a chair object. And even though these are all human objects, they are different because they have different appearances. So every time you create a new object in your game, you're going to have to choose one of the three properties. The first thing is how it looks. What kind of sprite are you going to give it? When you look at yourself in the mirror, you're seeing kind of your own sprite, but you don't see everything when you look at yourself in the mirror. It's a common misconception to think that sprites are objects, but they're not. They are just the way the object looks. The other property or component is the physics. The physics is how the objects interact with each other. Here's some examples. Let me find this. So here we go. Is the object affected by gravity? These leaves are going to be affected by gravity, but the astronaut is not. Is it solid? This treasure chest is, but a ghost will pass right through it. What happens when one object hits another? Can the object rotate? How heavy is an object? A crate that's made out of solid metal is going to be heavier than a crate made out of wood. Does the object bounce or fall flat on the floor? A brick will slide across the floor much more difficult, be a much more difficult problem than sliding ice across the floor. This is your friction. So those are the physics in your game. And the final property is the behaviors. And this is where the code comes in. The behaviors are the things that bring your objects to life. They determine what your objects do in the world. So in this game you just created, if you hit play right now, the ground floor does nothing, but the player will move back and forth and jump. So the first thing I want you to do is focus on the first property of the object, the sprite. So in your tutorial project, I want you to change the appearance of the bricks, the ground floor, and change the appearance of your main player sprite. And I don't want you to add any more sprites or delete any sprites. I just want you to change the appearance of these objects. Go ahead and do that. Pause the video and then come back when you're done. Okay, so you should have done something like this. Just so you know, all your objects are in your library and they should all be named based on what they do. So I can hit the player, hit edit sprite, browse, and there. I've just given my object a new sprite. So now it looks different. And the same with the ground blocks. That's just selecting. There we go. And now all my ground objects have changed their appearance. They still behave the same. They still have the same physics. The next challenge I want you to do is creating 2 additional objects in your game. So just create 2 different blocks or something, but change the physics so they behave differently when you start the game. So you might put 1 object here and 1 object here, change the physics so that when they fall and hit the ground, something different happens. Go ahead and pause the video and try to do that. Okay, so this is what I would do. You can click on it and hit create. I'm going to hit change the name to bounce. The type is what this block is going to do. I'm going to go to physics, make it movable, turn the bounce all the way up, hit OK. Then I'm going to create another one. Going to call it no bounce. Go to its physics, make it movable, but turn the bounce all the way down. And let's see what happens. Boom. These 2 different objects have different physics. That's why one is bouncing and the other is not. Then the final thing is the behaviors. You're going to be working a lot with behaviors, but just to show you real quick, I'm going to change the behavior of one of these objects. So I'm going to pick the one that doesn't bounce. And why don't you pause the video and give this block certain behaviors that make it different from the other block. Click on behaviors and try to put something together that makes this block do something. Go ahead and pause the video and then you can come back when you're done. Okay, I'm going to do something simple. I'm just going to go to my behavior bundles like I did with the player, and I'm going to add a run and jump bundle, and you can see the behavior blocks inside. Hit OK, and now when I play my game, both the player and the block have the same behaviors. So I'm going to include this guide here, and when you're done with this video, I just want you to go over it and read at least Actually, I want you to go over the whole thing. So you can do this with a partner. It's a very simple guide and it's going to help you extremely. And then I want you to spend the rest of the class period adding at least a total of 5 more objects, give them different sprites, different physics, and different behaviors. And then I want you to raise your hand and show me what you've created. It does not have to make sense. It doesn't have to be a game. I just want you to work on creating objects and changing the sprite, physics, and behavior for at least 5 different objects.